A very warm good morning to all of you. Dear students, once again, I would like to welcome all of you to a new session of the history class. Today, we are going to continue with the same chapter, chapter number 9, Independence and Partition of India, part 2. Do you remember what we were discussing in the last class? We were discussing about a few number of events which finally resulted in the Indian Independence Act 1947, or in other words, which finally resulted in the freedom of our country. After the end of the Second World War, Indian independence struggle has got entered into a new phase. And during this time, there was a deadlock between the Indian National Congress and the British administration because of the resignation of the Congress ministers from the administration. So in order to break this deadlock, the Viceroy of India, Lord Wavell, has introduced a plan. The plan is being known as Wavell Plan. He introduced the plan, and the plan says that India will be getting dominion status from the British. Dominion status means India will be having an administrative structure, or India will be getting a government, but it will be functioning under the British. Both the Congress leaders as well as the Muslim League, they have rejected this Wavell Plan because Congress party was demanding for complete independence from the British. So since the Wavell Plan was not promising any complete freedom from the British, Congress party rejected it. At the same time, Muslim League was demanding for the partition of the country into two. One will be India and the other will be Pakistan. And Wavell Plan has not given any promise about the partition of the country. So Muslim League also rejected it. And finally, Wavell Plan became a failure. Finally, the British administration, they understood that it will not be easy to rule India again for a number of years. As a result, they have appointed a mission, cabinet mission, to facilitate the process of transfer of power. It has done by Clement Attlee, who was the Prime Minister of Britain during 1947. Here, both Congress and Muslim League, they have accepted cabinet mission even though they were not happy with all the terms and conditions of the cabinet mission. So in order to take further steps, or in order to take necessary steps for the transfer of power, Lord Wavell has recalled and Lord Mountbatten has got appointed as the Viceroy of India. So these were the different points which we were discussing in the last class. Today we are going to study something further about Lord Mountbatten and the Mountbatten Plan. First of all, we will be discussing about Lord Mountbatten. He has got appointed as the Viceroy of India in 1947. He was not only just the Viceroy of India, but he has also got the responsibility as the Governor General of India. There was an aim behind the appointment of Lord Mountbatten as the Viceroy. What was that? Restore peace among Congress and Muslims. Because there were a number of conflicts between the Congress and the Muslims. Solve all those problems. That was the primary aim of Lord Mountbatten. Not only in his executive council, but in the country at large. That which means not only just in the administrative structure, but throughout the country. So that was the main aim behind the appointment of Lord Mountbatten as the Governor General of India. So in order to solve all these problems, Mountbatten has introduced a plan, and this plan is being known as Mountbatten Plan. And the Mountbatten Plan has got announced in 1947 June 3rd. And what was the main agenda behind the announcement of this plan? The plan was mainly focusing on the partition of India. And this particular ideology has introduced to 7 main leaders of our country during 1947. Who were the main leaders? First of all, definitely it will be Jawaharlal Nehru, then Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, then Kripalini, then Muhammad Ali Jinnah, then Laikwat, then Nishathar, and finally Baldev Singh. So these were the main 7 leaders of India during 1947. And in front of them, Lord Mountbatten has introduced his plan. Now let's see what were the main provisions of the Mountbatten plan. First of all, it was promising about the partition of the country into 2 different nations. One will be India and the other will be Pakistan, which means India to be divided into 2, India and Pakistan. And the second provision according to Mountbatten plan, a boundary commission, which means creation of boundary commission to settle the boundaries, which means the boundary commission will be deciding the boundaries of both the countries. That means which all provinces will be coming under Pakistan and which all provinces will be coming under India. So that was the main intention behind the creation of boundary commission. And the third provision according to the Mountbatten plan was relation between the 2 new dominions, which means both the dominions, India and Pakistan, has got all the freedom to take a decision whether they want to continue with their relation with the British. Commonwealth means group of independent nations. So once when India is being divided into 2 different dominions, both of nations will be free and they can decide whether they want to be in relation with British or not. So it was the third provision according to the Mountbatten plan. The fourth point was about the princely states. We have already seen in India there were number of princely states, and those princely states were free to join either of the dominions or to remain independent. We have already seen this particular point in one of the previous class, because they have given freedom to the princely states to decide either to join in the dominion in both either of the dominions or they can remain independent. So that was the clause given to the, or a condition or a choice given to the princely states. And the fifth one is about Bengal and Punjab. Here the partition depends on the legislative assemblies of the 2 provinces. So the legislative assemblies of the 2 provinces can decide about the decision or take the decision about the partition. So partition will be depending on the legislative assemblies of these 2 provinces. Then sixth one is about Sindh. Here also the legislative assembly of Sindh can take a decision about the partition, whether they want to join in Pakistan or in India. Then the seventh point says about Northwest Frontier provinces, which means a plebiscite to be held whether the people wanted to join in India or Pakistan. Plebiscite means right to cast a vote or by voting method. So there will an election can be conducted, and according to the interest of the people, they can take a decision whether they want to join in India or Pakistan. And the eighth one is the district of Sylhet. For the Sylhet district, the Mountbatten plan has given some concern. What was that? They have got the right to decide whether they want to join in East Bengal or remain in Assam. So it was a particular concern given to this particular district, and it will be decided by the decision of the people, and it will be finalized by casting vote. That's what is meant by referendum. The referendum means people can cast their vote on a political issue. So it was the eighth policy or eighth provision introduced by Mountbatten plan. And finally the ninth one, it is about the Constituent Assembly. During 1947, when all these discussions and problems were going on, there were already a constituent assembly existing in India. So that's what is meant by it will continue to exist. And this constituent assembly will be framing a constitution for India. And it will not be applicable for Pakistan. And Pakistan will have a new constitution, and there will be a separate constituent assembly for Pakistan which will be framing a constitution for the Pakistan. So that's what the ninth policy or ninth provision introduced by Mountbatten plan. And finally the last one, it's about the transfer of power. According to the last provision, the British administration will be transferring power quite early. Earlier, the British administration or the British Parliament promised that they will be transferring power by 1948 June. But here, Lord Mountbatten, according to the Mountbatten plan, they have promised the power will be transferred to India before June 1948. That means the Parliament will be passing an act on or before 15th August 1947. So transfer of power will be quite earlier than the promise which the British people have done very early. So these were the different provisions promised by the Lord Mountbatten plan. So now let's move to the next part of the chapter, that is about why did Congress accept the Mountbatten plan. First of all, there were a number of problems going on in different parts of the country, especially communal threat and violence. So they understood that it will not be able to control the people who were fighting for the freedom, as well as another fact was that there were a number of communal violence, and all those communal violence were just because of the partition of the country into India and Pakistan. So the leaders, they understood if they are not accepting the Mountbatten plan, it will be something like dividing India into number of Pakistans. So after judging, after evaluating all the political and social problems, the international leaders, they forced to accept the Mountbatten plan. That's the first point. And the second one says that Muslim League joined the interim government not to cooperate but to obstruct, which means there was an interim government. Interim government means mid-term government, which is not lasting for a long time, because we have already seen once the leaders, when they were discussing about the freedom of the country, there was an interim government formed in India along with the support of the Congress, Muslim League and the British. But actually the Muslim League joined in this government not for cooperating with the British as well as the International Congress, but their main intention was to distract or obstruct the different activities of the International Congress as well as the British administration. So it was a second problem which forced the International Congress to accept Mountbatten plan. And the third reason was there were no other option rather than to have a federation with a weak center, because if they are not accepting the Mountbatten plan, we will be having a federation with a weak center. And the fourth point says that continuation of British in India would mean a greater calamity in India. Already the people, they have got charged with the feeling of freedom from the British, and again if Congress is going on insisting or going on denying the different plans of the British, the leaders of the Congress, they understood that it will create a lot of calamities in India. So that's why the fourth point says that because of these calamities or because of this number of problems which were going on in India, the Congress party forced to accept the Mountbatten plan. And the fifth one says that delay in the transfer of power would place India in the middle of civil war, or if India is again getting late to accept the power, or if India is being late in getting the power, it will be leading only to the civil war. So again the condition of the country will be very poor. And the last point says that partition would override constitution of separate electorates and other undemocratic procedures. Which means if the leaders are accepting the partition, it will be highlighting about the secular feeling of the people, which means India will be considered as a country which is always respecting the secular feeling of the people. That's what is meant by partition would override constitution of separate electorates and other undemocratic procedure, because according to the democratic procedures, people are having freedom to make their own choices, or they have the right to choose their interest. So once if they are agreeing the demands of the people to divide the country into two on the basis of religion, it will be always upholding the India's true nature to support the feeling of the people on the basis of religion. So these were the 6 different reasons which forced the Indian National Congress to accept Mountbatten plan. So dear students, I hope you understood this part very well, and if you have any doubts, please watch my class once again, and there you will get a very clear picture about it. And this particular portion is a very important part of our syllabus, as well as a very important event in the history of our country. So learn it very well, and it will help you to understand the upcoming part very well. So dear students, today we are winding up here, and I will be coming up with the next part of the chapter in the next class. Till then, I am signing off from my class. Thank you.